Should I wait to extend? So that's kind of what I'm alluding to. You have a short lease or something that you consider to be a short lease, and you're wondering, should I extend now? Should I wait based on the pending change? What is a short lease? I get asked this a lot, and I mean a lot. What is a short lease? A short lease has a technical definition, but just maybe 3 months ago, I ended up losing a client because she viewed what she was purchasing as a short lease. It had about 150 years on it, and she was doing a 20-year mortgage. So even after she paid off that mortgage, it still wouldn't be technically a short lease. But in her mind, she felt it was a short lease. And this is why it's important to understand not only the technical terms, but the impact on the property value and the mortgageability of the home. The length of the lease is one of the most crucial factors in determining the value, marketability of a property. A short lease means the clock is running down, and as the remaining years fall, the costs to extend increase. The property becomes less attractive to buyers and lenders. This can create a serious financial impact if it's not addressed early. So what that means is if you buy a home and it's not on a 999-year lease, if it's 120 or 100 or below 100, it just means that as the clock is ticking down, you're kind of reaching a cliff edge as far as the value of the property and what the extension costs will be, and if you can actually extend. And we'll get into something about the marriage value shortly. More about what a short lease is. So a definition. So the definition of a short lease is a lease with fewer than 80 years. It's generally considered short. Different lenders may have different views because when you go to get the mortgage or remortgage, the lender won't only look at how many years are currently left on the lease. They do have provisions for how many years are left on the lease when the mortgage ends. Marriage values can be a bit of a difficult concept, but here's the technical explanation and definition of a marriage value. Once below 80 years, the lease extension becomes more expensive because you must share the marriage value. That's the term, the marriage value with the freeholder. So that's the value from the extension. So if you've purchased a property that had a short lease and you then extend it, when you were buying it with the short lease, you probably paid a little bit less for it because it had a short lease. If you then extend it, that can increase the property value by hundreds of thousands. That increased property value, that marriage value, needs to be shared with the freeholder. So this is a good conversation to have with the solicitor, a good conversation to have with someone that extends leases, that you can understand what the costs are. So how much it's going to cost for you to extend it and what the potential increased value is if and when you do extend it. So the impact on the value. Short leases reduce a property's market value, sometimes by tens or hundreds of thousands. And this might be a strategy for some investors where they buy something with a shorter lease, they extend it, they may do some refurb on the property, then they remortgage at the higher value. This might be one of the instances where someone would use a bridging loan. I will say that in my experience, this is one of the reasons why someone might do a bridging loan, to raise the capital in order to extend the lease. And then the exit strategy for the bridging loan is to remortgage. So they had a house that was valued at, let's just say 200,000 because the lease was so short. They extend the lease, it costs them X amount. That's what they raise the capital for using the bridging loan. Then now, because they've extended that lease, that property value that was 200,000 is maybe 500,000, let's say. So they've increased the value. They can now remortgage based on the new value of that property and the fact that it now has a longer lease. There are mortgage barriers, and this is the bit that you need to speak to a mortgage broker about and a solicitor. But remember, a mortgage broker and a solicitor have different areas of specialty. So the mortgage broker is going to be able to talk to you about criteria. One of the mortgage barriers is many lenders are reluctant to offer mortgages on short leases, making it harder to sell or remortgage. So keep that in mind. When you're purchasing a property that might seem like a great deal because it's a short lease, think about your exit strategy. Think about what happens when you need to remortgage. So that's a quick overview of what a short lease is. How to extend a short lease. You might be thinking, I have a short lease, or my lease is coming in around 85 years or maybe below. Should I extend it? Extending a lease can protect the property's value, make it easier to sell, and remove some of the financial burdens that come with a short lease, because there are some financial burdens attached to it. Leaseholders generally have two main options: the statutory legal route or an informal agreement with the freeholder. Each path has its advantages, costs, and risks, so it's important to understand the differences before deciding. This is not a do-it-yourself thing. This is not I'm going to go on ChatGPT or on Google and figure out how to do it myself. These are things that you do want to hire a firm or a company that can do this properly. They're going to charge you, so you will pay money, but make sure that you do this correctly. Don't try to cut corners. Don't try to be smarter than the system. Find a property professional, a solicitor, a law firm that does this regularly, has a track record, and do your due diligence. Remember, I'm not giving legal advice, financial advice, or tax advice. I'm just sharing information, and your home could be repossessed if you don't keep up the repayments on your mortgage. So a short lease, how to extend a short lease. There are different ways of going about it. As I said, you have the statutory right under the Leasehold Reform, Housing and Urban Development Act 1993. After 2 years of ownership, you can legally extend the lease by 90 years and reduce ground rent to zero. So this is the statutory right. The predictability, the statutory process follows a clear set of rules and protections, giving leaseholders certainty about the outcome. You can do informal agreements. And when you speak to your solicitor, make sure that you explore both options, but make sure you understand the upsides and downsides of both options. You can negotiate directly with the freeholder for a lease extension, often quicker, but less predictable terms. So basically, it's up to them how they're going to price it. The risks of the informal route: while faster, it may come with higher ground rent or shorter extension, so professional advice is recommended. These are the type of things that we're dealing with property. We're dealing with probably the most expensive thing that you will purchase in your life. Don't try to cut corners. Don't try to save a couple £100, because in my 30 plus years of experience working in finance, people who shop purely, and I don't mean that this should not be a consideration, but people who shop for professional services purely on price. They don't look at service. They don't look at risk. They don't look at, they don't do their due diligence. They just look at, compare the solicitor.com and find the cheapest one. They end up spending more in the long run, either in stress, in money, in regulatory burdens, or just being in the wrong place with the wrong product. So if you're looking to extend a short lease, you do have options. Make sure you use a solicitor or a firm that has done this and is very good at it. What if you can't find the freeholder? So you want to extend your short lease, but you can't find the freeholder. Sometimes the leaseholders face the added complication of an absent or untraceable freeholder. So it could be that the freeholder is passed, or it's part of an estate, it's improper. There could be so many different things. This can make the extension process seem impossible, but the law provides a solution, because it happens enough that there are ways of doing it. By applying through the courts, you can still secure your lease extension, provided you can prove that a genuine effort has been made to locate the freeholder. So in that, you need to go through the process of doing the very best that you can to find the freeholder. You need to document what you do. You need to have proof that you've done everything that is possible to find the freeholder. There are companies that will do this for you. So it may be that in the process, you actually find the freeholder, but you can't just rock up at court and say, yeah, I looked for them. I typed the name in Google and I couldn't find it. Therefore, I want to go this other route. You have to be able to document the process, give it some time, do your very best to find the freeholder. Don't use this as an excuse to not find the freeholder. Do your very best to find the freeholder. What if you can't find the freeholder? So let's now narrow in. You have an absent landlord. So here's the absent landlord process. When the freeholder cannot be found, leaseholders can apply to the court or tribunal for what's known as vesting order. So this is a vesting order. Another option, court involvement. The court effectively steps into the freeholder's role and grants the lease extension on their behalf. As I said, you do need to prove that you have been trying to find the freeholder. So leaseholders must provide evidence of reasonable attempts to trace the freeholder, such as searches or professional reports. This is why working with a professional firm that does this all the time is going to work in your favor. It's going to cost you some money, but when you go to court, if it's a reputable firm that does this all the time, they'll make sure that it's a solid case and a solid demonstration of the work that you've put in to find the freehold. Outcome. Once approved, the lease extension proceeds as if the freeholder had agreed, protecting the leaseholder's rights and property and value. So this is how you would extend a leasehold if you can't find the freeholder. You do need to make sure that you've done your very best to find them, but it is possible to extend the lease if you can't find the freeholder. Should I wait to extend? So that's kind of what I'm alluding to. You have a short lease or something that you consider to be a short lease, and you're wondering, should I extend now? Should I wait based on the pending changes? What should I do? So deciding when to extend a lease is a crucial financial decision. So you need the right professionals who aren't there just trying to sell you something and put money in their pocket, but are going to give you the best advice. There's two key people you need. You need a solicitor and you need a mortgage broker. The mortgage broker will understand the criteria. They'll be able to give you the figures behind what the remortgage or mortgage will look like. The solicitor will be able to talk you through the legal costs and get you in touch with the freeholder, etc. Some leaseholders hope that upcoming reforms might make the process cheaper or easier, but waiting comes with risks. I just want to stress, I want to keep saying that these changes aren't 100%. And even if they do get passed, they may take some time to actually go into law. So as time passes, leases get shorter, costs increase, and the property becomes harder to finance or sell. In most cases, acting sooner protects both the value and the flexibility. Do your research. Don't try to cut corners. Don't try to save money that's actually going to end up costing you more money. So if you're considering, should I extend? Should you wait? Should you move forward? Think about these things. Time is money. Every year that passes reduces the lease length and increases the eventual costs of the extension. So project yourself into the future, 1 year, 2 years. Is that going to be a meaningful difference? When you speak to a mortgage broker, and as I said, I have an active case with this with a client right now, I'm saying, well, you could wait, but this is what it will look like 2 years from now if you don't extend and if this new legislation is not passed. So this person then needs to make a decision based on the downside, because quite often we make our decisions based on best case scenario. So you might say, oh, well, I'm going to wait 2 years because I'm pretty certain that this legislation is going to go through and it's going to save me £30,000. That might be the case. But what if the legislation gets delayed or rewritten? And by delaying, it's actually going to cost you an extra £40,000 if you don't extend now. 80-year threshold. Once the lease falls below 80 years, marriage value applies, making extensions much more expensive because now the freeholder is in an even better leverage position. So it can cost way more. On certain reforms, even if the government changes are introduced, they may not apply retrospectively to existing leases. Caveat, Make sure you think about that. It may be that the new laws only apply to new purchases and new leases. So make sure you're speaking to a professional, a solicitor who knows what they're doing. Practical advice: extending sooner rather than later is generally safer, particularly if you plan to sell, remortgage, or release equity. You may just need to bite the bullet. You may need to raise the capital, potentially through a bridging loan, to extend the lease, then remortgage. Then not only have you added value to the property, it's then something that you can put into generational wealth. You can put into your estate planning because it has an extra 300, 400 years on the lease. So make sure that if you're considering extending, you're looking at all of the scenarios. You're not just trying to be cheap and cut corners. You're not having a view that is very short term and very optimistic. As they say, hope for the best, but expect the worst. I've covered off quite a few things. So I've covered off leasehold versus freehold. We've talked about lease extension. Should you wait? We've talked about the reform. You will need to speak to a solicitor, and you'll also need to speak to a mortgage broker. I stress to you, it's two completely different disciplines. The solicitor will take care of the legal term, but will not understand lender criteria. You will not go to your bank. Do not go to your bank. Make sure you speak to a broker. This may fall into the specialist lender realm. If you go directly to your bank, and I've been a bank manager at all the big brands, both in the US and the UK, and some of the staff are amazing. But remember, they can only talk to you about their products. Most high street banks tend to cater to the vanilla client. So they don't tend to specialize in situations like short leases or credit issues or the more complex things. Some do, but most don't. So this is why you need to speak to a mortgage broker. So if you're planning a property project and think a bridging loan may be a part of the journey, now's the time to prepare. The reason why I say that is because some people aren't going to have the money that they need in order to extend the lease, especially if it's around that 80-year mark where you're going to have to look at marriage value. So a bridging loan would be the ideal thing. But even if you're just looking to extend a short lease, even if you just want to have the conversation because you're buying a property and the current lease is around 100 years or 110 years, and you're just concerned and you want to understand the impact on mortgaging or remortgaging, make sure that you reach out to me. Book a free consultation, get clear, no pressure answers to your question. The smartest investors gather the right information before they need it. So when the opportunity knocks, they're ready to move. So make sure you reach out to me. My name is Anthony Lindsay. And as I've said, these videos are not to replace speaking to a qualified professional that you know, that you trust, that understands your circumstances. I'm not giving legal advice, tax advice, or financial advice, and your home could be repossessed if you don't keep up the repayments on your mortgage. I offer a free consultation. You do not pay to speak to me. If we don't do anything and I advise you and I explain everything and you decide not to work with me, it doesn't cost you a penny, but you can walk away more informed. If you've liked this video, and even if you haven't, make sure that you subscribe to this video, make sure that you leave comments, and make sure that you share this with anyone who might find it valuable. By subscribing to the video, it tells YouTube that the information that I'm sharing is valuable and it helps get it in front of more people. Remember, your home is something that is probably the most expensive thing that you'll ever purchase. Always do your due diligence, always work with professionals who are honest. And remember, the process is as fast as the slowest person. So you want to find someone who is responsive, someone who will answer your questions, and someone like me who even has evening appointments as well as Saturday appointments. Thanks for watching, and make sure that you like, share, and subscribe.